If you've ever watched Gintama, you've heard of the term Madao, or a totally hopeless old man, or good for nothing old man. And this goes for the main protagonist, Gintoki, but a secondary character in the story, or more so side character, Hasegawa, where we first meet him in episode 7, where he works for the government and his job is pretty much foreign affairs. And in this episode, Hasegawa is tasked with protecting the idiot prince. I cannot remember his actual name at the moment, but the idiot prince, and look helping to look for a alien octopus that the prince wants as a pet. And in this episode, the pet goes missing for a while. Kagura accidentally tries to cook it in boiling hot water, and this ends up transforming the pet into a giant octopus. Once the octopus transforms, it attacks Shinpachi and Gintoki and also Kagura. But Hasegawa decides to not help Shinpachi at all so he can show the prince that this animal is dangerous and it needs to be put down. And Gintoki outright just tells him that may be your way of doing things, but my way of doing things is completely different. For Hasegawa, that was always how he tried to do it. He tried to keep his head down and go by the rules, but he also always had his own different code. So at the end of the episode, when the prince tells Hasegawa to deal with them, he just punches him and tells him, no, I'm going to follow my own Bushido and whatnot. And this ends up getting Hasegawa fired. And his boss tells him to pretty much kill himself for what he's done. And this leads Hasegawa down the path of Amato, someone who has lost both his job, his wife, his house, and pretty much everything that he owns to his name. The only thing he's left with are sunglasses and the name Hasegawa, more so Amato, because no one really respects him anymore. But even though Hasegawa's down on his luck and always losing jobs and whatnot, we're shown multiple times within Gintama that Hasegawa is a character that is capable of having a job, living a normal life, and is shown again in episode 19, I believe, when he gets a job as a taxi driver and the prince shows up again. There's the prince and then a pregnant couple where the lady really needs to get to a hospital so she doesn't end up giving birth out on the street or having complications with the birth. And the prince tells Hasegawa and Gintoki, forget about her, just get me to where I need to be. And Hasegawa tells him to just shut up, and he drives his way all the way to a hospital for the pregnant couple. And in turn, he gets fired for attacking a customer and whatnot. But it shows Hasegawa's values, even though he needs a job, even though he needs to get back up on his feet. He chooses to do what he wants, and it usually leads to him getting fired or losing the job. But also at the same time, a lot of times Hasegawa loses his job is due to Gintoki, Shinpachi, and Kagura and everyone around them. But when we're shown Hasegawa losing a job, most of the time it's on him or something he's doing. But one of my favorite episodes for Hasegawa is in 188, where Daigoro meets Hasegawa in the park and takes him in as essentially a pet. And Hasegawa lives with Daigoro and his mom for about a week because I believe it's spring break or winter break. It should be spring though. And during this time, Hasegawa lives in the pet house for a bit until one day a storm comes and Daigoro's mom goes out of her way to find Hasegawa and make sure he's perfectly fine. And Hasegawa ends up coming back, and Daigoro gets sick because he went out of his way looking for Hasegawa and the mother also gets sick, having looked for Hasegawa as well. And when Hasegawa finally returns, Daigoro says, "So you finally came back. Were you drinking again?" Because Hasegawa was crying, and usually when he's crying, it means he's been drinking. And Hasegawa just tells him, "No, no more drinks for me." And for the next few days, Hasegawa's living a normal life. He's getting back up on his feet. He's looking for jobs, and he's living with Daigoro and his mother. And he does land a job interview. When he makes it to the job interview, Hasegawa proceeds to get there, and he's pretty much a shoe in for the job once he gets into the interview room. But there's a man sitting there, and the two of them talk, and Hasegawa says, "Yeah, I'm coming back from my life as a Madao," and the other guy says, "I'm doing the same." And Hasegawa just asks him, "How did he become a Madao?" And he says, "I had a wife and a kid, and one day I got an injury while I was working, and after that I kind of went on a downward spiral, and I treated my wife and child poorly, even though all they ever did was try and help me." Hasegawa, knowing who these people are now and knowing what the story is, he decides to get up and start drinking. He's drinking a bunch of sake, beers, and whatnot. And by the time he goes into the interview room, he's a drunken mess. He ruins all of his chances. And next thing we see is it jumps about a week or so, and Hasegawa's back on the park bench in his usual clothing. And Daigoro comes across them and asks him, "Why did you do it? Why did you go? Why did you go into that interview room and make a fool of yourself?" And Hasegawa just tells him, "If you don't have any drinks, what are you here for?" And Daigoro starts crying, asking him, "You're not, well, not asking, telling him, you're not a, you may lie, but at the end of the day, you're not a bad person. You've helped me and my mother gain back something that we had thought we lost completely." And he says, "No matter what anyone says about you, no matter what they think about you, I know that you're a good person and that you did something good for us." And Hasegawa just tells him, like I said, "If you don't have any drinks, beat it, kid." And Daigoro's mom tells him, "Just leave him alone. There's nothing more you can do for him, and we don't know him anymore." And they drive off, and another old man comes in and says, "Oh, Hasegawa, you got drinks? Let me get a sip." And when he drinks it, he says, "Hasegawa, this is just water. What is this?" And Hasegawa states, "No, I'm done drinking. I don't need any more sake or beer. I've had enough. I've had enough for a lifetime." And he tells Daigoro to be happy with his mom and father. Now, I'm not sure if this was a filler episode or a canon episode. It could really fit either way, since Gintama's kind of episodic but not. But it does show the type of person Hasegawa is. There's another episode in where Hasegawa goes on a game show, and a girl and her mother are in so much debt because of the girl's father. So Hasegawa tells them he'll take on the burden of the debt and he'll pay it all off. And Hasegawa, due to him being an an actual bum and living on the street, he usually knows what kids are into and whatnot and things like that. And it's usually a bunch of questions that only the kids would know. So he gets all the answers right except for one, and he needs to place a call and ask her what the answer is. And the girl tells him the answer, and he wins, I think, 1,000,000 yen or so. And it's enough to pay off the debt, only to find out that, yeah, the father, he, all Hasegawa paid off was the interest, but the actual debt itself still needed to be paid. And it goes to show the type of character Hasegawa is. He's a man that, for all intents and purposes, is always down on his luck, could easily get a job, could actually turn his life around, but usually chooses to sacrifice his own happiness for someone else's happiness. And I think Hasegawa, as a character, though he's used mainly as a punchline or a joke, is still a great depiction of someone that, even though they're down on their luck, they'll rather choose to help others get people. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Those that are down on their luck or having a hard time, he'd rather sacrifice his own future and happiness for others. And Hasegawa was just a fun character outright. And that's one of the few things that I just like about Gintama. There's many more things, but Hasegawa was a great character. Other than that, I'm done.